My friend Captain John Konrad refused to pick a walk-up song, which means we get the worst thing we can find on short notice. Anyway, Captain, I bet you won't make that mistake again.
The worst thing that you can find, that's the best thing you could possibly find. And that and YMCA, we're talking Trump music right now.
All right. Obviously, a lot of hubbub has been made today about the Pete Hegseth speech. I wanted to talk specifically about this one, actually, because you have an area of expertise.
Any place where tried and true physical standards were altered, especially since 2015 when combat arms standards were changed to ensure females could qualify, must be returned to their original standard.
Captain, okay, I get why an Army Ranger, why a Marine has to be able to do pull-ups and run and hump some weight. That surely doesn't matter to things like the Navy, right?
Well, I thought I was going to get a lot of pushback from that. And to be clear, I'm Merchant Marine, so we deliver the ammo and the fuel to the Navy. But that means our ships are old, they're decrepit. You've heard Trump talk about want to reinvigorate shipbuilding because our ships are ancient, and most of those cargo comes in on Chinese ships. Well, the side of that is I've been in major ship fires. I've had engine room fires, battery room fires. I've had massive leaks. And the Navy really hasn't, because their ships are in excellent condition, other than a few collisions like the Fitzgerald. They haven't really worked those muscles of a major, World War II salvage where they get hit by a torpedo. But I'm here to tell you, man, I got 8 varsity letters at track in high school. I roomed with a Navy SEAL. I'm a big outdoors hiker. I do a lot of rucking, and then one of these emergencies on ship, because Go outside, fill up a bucket full of water. Water is heavy, and whether that water is pouring through a pipes and you got to close a watertight door or get a seal over that or just turn a wrench against it because there's flooding, or there's a fire and you got to lug those massive fire hoses up 6 flights of stairs and around a watertight door. And when I first fought my first fire, there were a couple guys on our team who were they were the best trained. I trained them well, and 2 of those guys, were 5 foot something, not very big guys. And I remember, right when that fire broke out, I'm like, "You guys get out of firefighting gear," and I pointed to the 2 largest guys, and you get in gear. And during the debriefing later, they asked me, "Why did you do that?" And I didn't even remember I had. It wasn't even something conscious. It was just, we had to move this massive cargo and these batteries away from the fire, and it was just instinctual. You need big guys in order to do that, and if we had casualties, you'll have to get someone who can drag those big guys out of the fire.
Speaking with Captain John Konrad, U.S. Merchant Marine Captain, I have spoken many times on the show because I'm a history freak about World War II battles, and touched on what it's like when a ship is on fire and how intense it is and how dangerous of a situation it is. Only I have never lived it. You have lived it. What is it about fire? You're on the water. What's the big deal?
The big deal is you can't call 911. People think even if you get a medic aid, they see the Coast Guard going out in the helicopter and lifting people off ships. Those helicopters only have a 200-mile range. It's 5,000 miles to China. And if you're on the enemy side, you're not getting that help. So you're on their own. There's no police department. There's no fire department. Everything has to be done. So if you don't have the intelligence, if you don't have the skills, if you don't have the tools on board, and if you don't have the strength to fight these fires, you're in trouble. The other thing is, because you can't get that aid. See, if a soldier gets in a firefight, right? What's he going to do? He's going to call in backup. They're going to send in another unit. They're going to get the Rangers. They're going to bring in the Navy SEALs. It may take a little bit of time, but they're going to add resources to that problem until the enemy's overwhelmed. On a ship, you can't bring in those resources. What you have is what you got. And the sad truth is the Navy hasn't fought a real sea battle since World War II. My favorite thing of the whole speech was actually Trump. When Trump went in there and said, "I think I want to bring back battleships." The admirals tell me we can't, but I think a big battleship with armor is just the thing we read in there right now. And you could see the admirals like, No, you can't do that. Well, why can't we? They think with these modern, they have such a set of rules that have been established over the last 40 years of what carriers are supreme. We can have, women on ships. We can have this on ships. We can do things, when the Fitzgerald collided, they had to drift into cell phone range to do a mayday because they didn't know how to set up an emergency antenna. So they have very strict rules, and we're the best in the world. I don't want to disgrade them. I mean, we are the best in the world by far at what we do. But some things like massive casualty events in a fire have not been tested since World War II. So whatever you think is in the rule book has to be revisited. And I loved how Trump just, even if we don't build battleships, just breaks that paradigm. What he was telling the Navy admirals is whatever you think you know about combat is not true. We need to reassess every single piece of this. And I think one piece of that is the physical standards of the sailors who, quite frankly, 99.9% of the time, you can be a little overweight. You don't have to be in the best shape to be on the ship. But if we go into battle, you better believe I want strong men there to be able to handle that.
Again, I'm speaking with Captain John Konrad. I know you have a love for battleships. I frankly adore them. Why do you want to bring them back?
Well, what part of it is just, like I said, break the paradigm in the admirals. They don't know as much as they think they know. They've been stuck on this DEI track for so long, they start believing their own nonsense. And, everything's joint now. So on all these ships, you'll have NATO officers in billets. You walk around the Pentagon, there are NATO officers all around. Well, those officers, their governments are telling them, cut back on Navy spending. Let's spend it on Army tanks instead, because Army tanks are cheap. Nobody wants to build the warships. So you have this whole NATO and UN apparatus infused in our rank that is pulling us away from big Navy spending to Army spending because it benefits them. I don't care about them. I want what benefits us. And if you look in the Red Sea right now, nothing else is working. The carrier air groups aren't working to protect logistics ships. We got to get those munitions, the Army weapons over there. We can't fly them. We don't have enough planes. So we got to get them. It means you need to protect ships. Well, the Marines can't, the Army can't protect ships, the Air Force can't protect ships, not even the submarines. A lot of people say, and Trump said, our submarines are the one thing we are 3 times better than the Chinese Navy about. That is true, but a submarine can't protect a merchant ship, cargo ship, from drones. The one thing that can is these destroyers. They're doing phenomenal work in the Red Sea. But the problem is they run out of fuel because they're not nuclear, and they run out of missiles quickly. Well, what is a battleship? A battleship is a bigger destroyer. So a bigger hull means more missiles, more fuel, and you're able to put more sensors on to defeat some of these new systems. And the battleship has, as Trump said, it's not aluminum like our ships where a missile, if it gets through the defenses, will just rip a hole right through. It's got thick steel. What's old is new again. And I think these modern missiles, even the hypersonics that China has, they're not designed, these drones certainly aren't, to penetrate through 16 inches of steel like the battleship has. So I don't want to overcomplicate it, but that's the bottom line. They're a bigger destroyer with armor.
I think you explained it quite well. Captain, thank you so much. I appreciate you. That's exactly the education we needed. Thank you.